Vrindai Hai Tulsi Devyai Priyai Hai Kesavashacha Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satya Vachai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Hai Tulsi Devyai Priyai Hai Kesavashacha Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satya Vachai Namo Namaha. Jai Tulsi Maharani ki Jai. We offer our most respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees who can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls. Jai Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasinuvibhacha Patitanam Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, so bugs. No bugs. Okay. So today is a very special day in the Vaishnava calendar. If I cartels. No, you're not. Can't go in that room. Remember that. So it's Bhaktivinode Thakur's appearance day. Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur. And so we're going to speak a little bit about him. And then right after the curtains open, we'll have a Pushpanjali for Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur. And tonight, I guess I'm also going to be speaking about Bhaktivinode Thakur during the program in Greensboro. Oh.
I brought this in case whoever was going to speak would like to read it or not.
What is this? Wow. Holy shit. That. Well, maybe later. I got a whole class right now. So, anyway, Bhaktivinode Thakur ki Jai, and Bhaktivinode Thakur, of course, is the spiritual master of Gaura-Kishora Babaji Maharaj, actually Siksha Guru, and Gaura-Kishora Babaji Maharaj is the spiritual master of Bhaktivinode Thakur's son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is the spiritual master of His Divine Grace, Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidakacharya Satara Sata Shri Shrimad Srila Prabhupada Bhakti Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So anyway, all right. So first we're going to chant Jai Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janat Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janat Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tera Vanachade Yamuna Tera Vanachade Jai Hurat Humadhuva Kunda Vihagate Jai Hurat Humadhuva Kunda Vihagate Gopijana Balaba Giri Baladagotre Gopijana Balaba Giri Baladagotre Yasudanandana Brajajana Ranjana Sudanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jimunatira Manajati Yamunatera Manachari Jai Hurat Umadava Kunja Vihagati Jayurad Umadova Kunda Vikhade Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivinode Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopikapatna Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Jagadada Sami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasadevi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, Om Ganatimiranda Shah Gananjana Shalakya Chaksura Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. So I was going to speak about his life, but then we got this nice book that describes all of his literary works at the end. I thought that might be I mean, for me, it's exciting because I'm into literary works. I mean, we've heard his biography many times. Just some short statements about his biography. You know, born in 1838, and he went through a lot of hardships when he was young. Very much taken with Christian theology in the beginning. The reason he was taken with Christian theology, I mean, attracted to Christian theology, was because the prominent type of religion that was being taught in India was like what Vivekananda and Ramakrishna mentioned, which is basically impersonalism, or even worse than impersonalism. It's Yatomat Tatupat, which Prabhupada criticized. It means basically do your own thing. I was with Prabhupada when he actually talked about that. Prabhupada said, referring to a book about transactional analysis, he says, they say, I'm okay, you're okay. And, which is the same thing as Yatomat Tatupat. And Prabhupada said, we say, I'm okay, you're not okay. Prabhupada, everybody just started laughing, rolling on the ground when he said that. So, anyway, and it took some time before he actually came in touch with the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and that actually really just cemented. Oh, because he's a Nityasiddha devotee, of course, we understand that. And for a Nityasiddha devotee, sometimes it appears under the influence of Yoga Maya that they're actually not Krishna conscious. But that's sometimes people will criticize, say, oh, Bhaktivinode Thakur, he ate this or that when he was young. But this is part of the Lord's pastimes when he has devotees being born in sometimes demoniac families, like Prahlad Maharaj, being born in a demoniac family. And Bhaktivinode Thakur is sometimes called, compared to Prahlad Maharaj, born in a family of Daityas. So many other stories that we've told many times about Bhaktivinode Thakur, about freeing a ghost from a tree, and the ghost was influencing a judge to pass different judgments, and so he had the father of a great girl scholar chant the Bhagavatam under the tree, and after a month the tree fell down and was finished. There's the famous story of Bishikishena when Bhaktivinode Thakur was the magistrate. There was this guy who declared himself to be God, and he had two friends, Brahma and Shiva, and he used to take girls from all the neighboring villages and have his so-called rasa dance with them in a material body, and take money from the different kings in the area. And the worst thing was, actually, according to the law, was that he was against the British Raj. That was interesting. That was the only illegal thing he did. The only thing they could convict him on. It's actually true. It's probably the same thing in America. If someone's a criminal, they can convict you, but if someone declares themselves to be God, you can't do anything about them, right? I don't think you can do anything about it. Someone says that they were God. So, Bhaktivinode Thakur, under the jurisdiction of the English government, arrested this guy with great problems to arrest the guy, because the guy was making fire come out of his hair. You know, he was a yogi. And Bhaktivinode Thakur said, I really appreciate your yogic powers, but I'll take you to see Lord Jagannath. And the guy said something that really incensed Bhaktivinode Thakur. He said, Lord Jagannath's just a hunk of wood. And so, that really hurts devotees when they hear that. And Bhaktivinode Thakur dragged him to the prison, and he had to have so many, Muslim guards guard him, because the Hindus didn't want to guard him. And there was an 18-day court case, and during that 18-day court case, this Vikshena uses yogic powers to make one of Bhaktivinode Thakur's daughters extremely sick. Bhaktivinode Thakur's wife said, you should give up the case, and Bhaktivinode Thakur said, better we all die. We have to get rid of this guy. His great determination. And then finally Bhaktivinode Thakur got sick on the final day of the case, and he pronounced the guy, he only gave him 18 months, because it was just like a English law type of thing. So he gave him 18 months to be in prison, but what happened is that they shaved off his head, his hair, of course. They shaved off his hair as soon as he was convicted, and he fell to the ground, lost all of his yogic powers because he kept his yogic powers in his hair like Samson in the Bible. And then, after a few weeks, he actually committed suicide in prison and died, this Bhaktivinode. So that's a very, very famous story. I'm just going to mention some of the most famous stories. Another famous story is that when he was in charge of the magistrate division in Puri, he regulated the deity worship to an extreme extent. And he always carried a watch with him. Nowadays, people are very reluctant to wear watches. I don't see anybody with a watch. Yeah, just two people with a watch here. So Prabhupada always wore a watch. Bhaktivinode Thakur had a pocket watch. Because at that time, they called it a fob or something like that, because at that time they didn't have wristwatches. Or maybe they did, but he didn't wear a wristwatch. So he regulated the deity worship there, caught the king stealing money from the hundi. Hundi is the donation box. And he made the king do so many offerings, pay for so many offerings a day, and the king's treasury was depleted. And the king got so upset he hired 50 pundits to kill Bhaktivinode Thakur. That is, to do a sacrifice, a 1 month sacrifice to kill Bhaktivinode Thakur. And at the end of that 1 month, guess what happened? The king's son died. And Bhaktivinode Thakur also went to Vrindavan. 3 times he went to Vrindavan and helped solve problems with dacoits in Vrindavan. And let's see. And then he quit government service. Let's see. There's many things I'm leaving out here because I really. Oh, not quite loud enough. Oh, okay. Let me put that closer to my mouth. So, anyway, it's pretty loud. So anyway, so he quit government service in 1887, and he just wanted to go to Vrindavan. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, no, you can't go to Vrindavan. But you have to do some service in Navadvip. And of course, that service was discovering the birth site of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he did that when he was staying in Navadvip in the Rani Dangshala. He saw a bright light coming from the place where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had appeared. Went there the next day, found a mound of tulsi trees on a mound. And it was revealed to him through studies of ancient manuscripts that that was the appearance place of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He later corroborated that by bringing Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, his Siksha Guru, to that particular place. And Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who was either 115 or 125 years old, and being carried around in a basket by his servant Bihari, jumped out of the basket and started dancing in ecstasy. And that really corroborated or verified that this was the place where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Later on, Bhaktivinode Thakur actually went out and collected money personally after he retired to build a temple there. Also, Bhaktivinode Thakur was responsible for basically the first preaching of Krishna consciousness in the Western world. He sent this book written in Sanskrit called the Gauranga Leela Smarana Mangala Stotram. And the introduction was actually in English. It's called Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, His Life and Precepts. And this book was found in Canada and in the UK by some of the devotees of there. I think it was Gopal Krishna Maharaj who found the book in Canada because he was attending McGill University. And McGill University was the place where it was. Anyway, so at the end of his pastimes, Bhaktivinode Thakur, he actually made believe he was sick so he could actually just be absorbed in bhajan. So he took the dress of a Babaji in 1908, but he was still writing books, and he feigned paralysis. In 1914, just before noon in Jagannath Puri, Bhaktivinode Thakur left this world. And just one statement by a Calcutta court judge about Bhaktivinode Thakur's character. He said, "I knew Thakur Bhaktivinod intimately as a friend and a relation. Even under the pressure of official work as a magistrate in charge of the heavy subdivision, he would always find time for devotional contemplation and work. Whenever I met him, our talk would turn for a few moments to the subject of bhakti and Dvaitavada, his duality, and the saintly work that lay before him. Service of God is the only thing he longed for, and service under the government, however honorable, was to him a clog." I mean, it's just like something you got to do, just like a speed bump. Just like sometimes we're driving and there's a speed bump in the road. Just gets in the way. So, just to give you an idea of his determination, here's his daily schedule. From 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. he would take rest. At 10 p.m. he would get up and do his writing with the light of an oil lamp, which is very difficult. I don't know if any of you have ever studied with the light of an oil lamp or a kerosene lamp. It's not the same thing as having the electric light. Very, very difficult. It strains the eyes. And he would write until 4 a.m., and we're going to hear about some of his writings in a second. Then he would take rest for half an hour, a power nap. He would rise, wash his hands and face, and chant japa. And then at 7, he would write letters. At 7:30, he would read. 8:30 in the morning, he would receive guests or continue to read. And 9:30 to 9:45, he'd take another power nap. And so at 9:45, he took his full bath, breakfast of a half quart of milk, chapatis, fruit, and then he'd go to court in a carriage, and he wore a coat and pants, Western clothes to court. And he had double size. If anyone's seen his picture, they see his neck beads that are actually really big. Tulsi neck beads and tilak. And he always wore tilak. He was very strong in his decisions. He did not allow any humbug in the court, and nobody could stand before, no upstart could stand before him. He would shave his head monthly. He never allowed a harmonium and never had any debts. So this is interesting. I mean, there's a reason for that. It's not that there's anything against harmoniums. I mean, I think I really have to clarify that. It's just, if you go to India, there's all these professional kirtan people who are just basically entertaining people, utilizing kirtan to make money. Like Prabhupada, for example, Prabhupada talked about hotels in a certain way. He said devotees don't go to hotels. Now, why did Prabhupada say that? Because at that point, hotels, at least, were meant for prostitution. So you have to understand the cultural context of these different statements, especially about harmoniums. Because, like Prabhupada one time got really upset when the devotees were having a kirtan competition, with all the neighboring villages in Mayapur. I was there. And they would decide who were the best kirtaniers. You have this name, kirtaniers. So Prabhupada never used that word, because it's like musicians, Anyway, so when Prabhupada heard they were having a competition, he got very upset. So that's really why Prabhupada really wanted to limit the kirtan instruments to 1 or 2 or 3 mridanga cartels, etc., like that. Prabhupada himself used the harmonium, and this was not a violation of Bhaktivinode Thakur's, prejudice against harmoniums. Bhaktivinode Thakur's prejudice against harmoniums was based upon the way that harmoniums were being used by professional people. For example, one time, this is my own personal experience. For example, one time in New Orleans, we had a fundraising concert by very famous kirtan people from India. With harmoniums and everything like that. They came. Of course, we raised money for the temple, which is kind of nice. And so I'm not going to mention which group it was. So the man came from India, very expert in chanting, Radha, Radha, Krishna, Krishna, whatever they were chanting. And then night they went back to the hotel, and we had to arrange for the meat and the liquor for them. So this, this is the response. This is the type of people, generally musicians, who, I think some of you may have experienced what musicians are like. Material musicians are like, they're really, not all of them, but if you look at the Beatles, or any of these groups, it's Shudra activity. So Prabhupada really Bhaktivinode Thakur wanted to just like instill in his own life and in the lives of everybody who was following him, like the Brahminical culture. But it's not per se that there was anything against harmoniums. I think we really have to address that particular issue, understanding the cultural context of that issue. Anyway, so court began at 10. 1 o'clock court was finished. Actually, in half a day, he did a full day's work. 2 p.m. He'd come home, bathe, and refresh. 2 o'clock, he'd return to office. And you could see he was very punctual, because when you're punctual like that, you can get a lot done. When you do things at the same time every day, you actually get much more done than if just like every day is a different schedule and you're just like wondering what you're going to do. So he set that example. Prabhupada set that example too. Prabhupada would wake up no matter what at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and then he'd do his writing. That Prabhupada described his writing like wearing away at a stone. In other words, you see how much writing Prabhupada did? Bhaktivinode Thakur, we're going to hear about it in a second. So much writing because you wear away gradually. And after a while, you've done a tremendous amount. But if you passionately, just like go into an all-nighter like they do at the university, isn't it? Then you don't get that much done, because then you crash the next day. So actually you get less done. So Bhaktivinode Thakur was the ultimate example of punctuality. Anyway, at 5 o'clock he'd translate works from Sanskrit and Bengali, then take evening bath, and then a couple of chapatis, another half quart of milk. And it's described he always consulted his pocket watch, which is what I spoke about before. He was very charitable. He declined all honors. What an example. He did not chew betel. That is really unique in Bengal. You may think, what is this, not chewing betel? He didn't like theaters because they were frequented by, it's described here, public women. So public women means prostitutes. There are many different words that are used for that. For example, Shakespeare, there's one of Shakespeare's works where he says, get thee to a nunnery. And he's actually referring to a house of prostitution in there, not a nunnery in that particular work. I know, because I studied Shakespeare under very expert Shakespeare people at the university. So he spoke Bengali, Sanskrit, English, Latin, Urdu, Persian, and Orient. He started writing books at 12 and continued turning out a profuse list of books until his departure from this world. So now I was just very inspired when I saw this list. There is literally, oh my God, from page 167 to 186, there's probably 15 to 20 books on each page. Okay, so let's start. This is amazing. I don't have time. So in 1849, he wrote his first book, glorifying the deity of Chandi. 1850, Hari Katha, about Lord Hari, that's Krishna. I'm not going to be able to get through all these. Sorry about this. Yeah, he's only 11 to 12 years old and he's writing all these books. Yeah, and then this series about Alexander the Great, when he was like 11 years old, 1857 to 1858. It's just like, all right, so I have to skip a lot of these because there's too many. 1863, Sannyasi, about a beautiful story about the adventures of a young sannyasi traveling throughout India and abroad. Do we have that book at all? I'd love to read that book. Composed in poetry. 1866, a speech about Gautama Rishi. Let me just take his most prominent ones because there's too much here. 1869, the Bhagavad is philosophy, it's ethics and theology. Wow. And talks about how Lord Chaitanya preached the Bhagavatam. It also talks about preaching the Bhagavatam according to time, place, and circumstance, and what certain... It's a very philosophical book, and it deals with the hermeneutics of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is really interesting. Hermeneutics means how to understand certain statements, statements about hell, statements about other things in the Bhagavatam, and what the intention of the Bhagavatam is when presenting these different statements, the teleology of the Bhagavatam. I mean, it's a really important book. He wrote in 1871 a book about Haridas Thakur, 1871, Temples of Jagannath at Puri. Wow, an English poem, wonderful poem in 1871, Sharagrahi Vaishnava. That means the Vaishnava who gets the essence of Krishna consciousness. It's a 22-verse English poem. I mean, it's a beautiful poem if you ever read it. Skipping about 20 more, 1880, Krishna Samhita. And this is a revolutionary treatise on the science of Lord Krishna. And the introduction itself is just like 83 pages. And in the Samhita portion, he's composed 281 Sanskrit verses, divided them into 10 chapters. Whew. Then there's the Kalyan. So he discusses Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan in this particular book. Kalyana Kalpataru. It's a songbook of 63 Bengali songs describing the desire tree that Bhaktivinode Thakur has brought down to the material world from the spiritual world. Wow. He describes the result of committing one's life and soul to Sri Sri Gaur Nitai. Talks about the confidential daily pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then there's a monthly Vaishnava periodical called the Sajjana Toshana he published in 1881. Bhagavad Gita commentary, 1886. He based this upon the Sanskrit commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Another one is one of his most important works is the Chaitanya Shikshamrita, which I refer to quite often because he talks about, in my empathic communication classes, he talks about we have different material needs as well as spiritual needs, how to remain balanced in devotional service. He talks about the topmost religions, secondary duties, primary duties, spontaneous devotional service, and ultimately up to pure love of God. Another book, Samod Dana Bhashyam, a commentary that gives pleasure to the virtuous. Bhajana Darpana Bhasha, a mirror which reflects the purport of devotional service. Wow. Prema Pradipa, another very important book, a torchlight of divine love. Philosophical Vaishnava novel. It's about three men from Calcutta traveled to Vrindavan in order to meet a Vaishnava who was a mystic yogi, and they become convinced of devotion to the Supreme Lord. But the third one gets misled by the mystic yoga process and cheats himself of the rare treasure of ecstatic love for Lord Krishna. I have not read the Prema Pradipa. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. That, and of course, we'll get later on to the Jaiva Dharma, which is his quintessential work, which details the voyages, the spiritual voyages of many different personalities, all the way from, just from let's say, personalism or materialism, all the way to the highest understanding and the details of how to cultivate your relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Srimati Radharani. Phew. Krishna Vijaya, which is a Bengali epic on the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Ooh. Sri Chaitanya Upanishad, which is a book that he discovered as part of the Atharva Veda, verifying Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's position. Vaishnava, this is 1888, Vaishnava Siddhantamala. How do we have time to even read all the books? Yeah. Amnaya Sutram, the codes of Vedic knowledge. You know, and I'm just thinking of myself, you know, I'm 72 years old. I've lived a longer life than Bhaktivinode Thakuras was on the planet. And then, what have I done? Navadvip Dham Mahatmyam. This is a very important book because it describes actually when Lord Nityananda took Jiva Goswami all around Navadvip. It's a very important book. We were actually talking about this book last night because it was Jiva Goswami's appearance day. Another edition of the Bhagavad Gita, Godrama Kalpataru. There's a collection of Bhaktivinode Thakur's essays describing his program of Namhat, or preaching Krishna consciousness everywhere. Harinam, which talks about the Harinam, Srinam. Many, many books about the holy name. There's an Srinam, Srinam Tattva Shikshashtaka, Srinama Mahima, Srinama Prachara. Phew. Tattva Viveka, very, very important book, which talks about, basically mentions different Greek philosophers and does a complete exposition on the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Very important book. Sharanagati, which is the Bengali songbook. Sharanagati. Gitavali, which is also this book here. Songbook. Gitamala, a songbook. Bahu Sangita, songs of the wandering, a mad wandering saint. Jaiva Dharma, which we mentioned before. I mean, this is amazing book. For Jaiva Dharma? 1893. He composed about 20 other books in 1893. I'm just looking at that. Also the Tattva Sutram, which deals with the Tattva, you know, basically the Tattvas, you know, anyway, Tattvas means the essential truths, eternal essential truths. I mean, I'm just, well, actually we have a little more time. I'm just getting overwhelmed here, thinking, when am I going to have time to read all these books? I think I'll just lock myself away and make believe I'm sick. That's a good, because I have all these books. Actually, I have most of these books on my computer. So I could actually do that. Maybe I'll get COVID or something like that. So I can do this. I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm just skipping tons of them. Shiguranga, Leela, Smarna, Mangala, Stotram. That's auspicious prayers for the remembrance of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. 104 original Sanskrit verses describing the most important pastimes and teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. See, Bhaktivinode Thakur also was very much concentrating what he called the Dashamula, the 10 essential truths of Krishna consciousness, because based on that Dashamula, he developed what's called his hermeneutical understanding of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. So I'm not going to get into what I meant by that. Hermeneutical means just how to apply according to time, place, and circumstances. Actually, I was listening to a class of Prabhupada. Prabhupada who said that one has to be very strong spiritually, because we don't want devotees who simply repeat like parrots. We want people who understand how to apply according to time, place, and circumstance and bring people to Krishna consciousness. Also, the class I was listening to today, Prabhupada said that devotees should be willing to shed gallons of blood to make one devotee. Prabhupada said it takes so long to make one devotee, so we should be, of course he was repeating what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said when he said it takes gallons of blood to make. But Prabhupada said Prabhupada elaborated on that. He was talking about how we expend our life's energy, so much time and energy just to bring someone to Krishna consciousness. Whew. So it's important not to let anyone leave Krishna consciousness. Another book is Swalikita Jivani, which is his autobiography, I've read that many times. It's actually a letter that he wrote to Ali Prasad Thakur, his son, and it details his whole life. It's his autobiography. Brahma Samhita, 1897, Krishna Karnamrita. Wow, these are prayers to Sri Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in Sanskrit. Actually, another Bhagavad Gita commentary, Goloka Mahatmyam, the glories of Goloka Vrindavan. And this book also describes the travels of Gopakumar, who we know from the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Wow. Goloka Mahatmyam. I have to read that book too. Well, we'll see you all in about 10 years from now. It's really attractive, isn't it, to hear about these things? Bhajanamrita, the nectar of worship. Navadvip Bhava, Taranga, ways of ecstatic mood in Mayapur or Navadvip. Harinam Chintamani, which we have in English. It's been published. Shrimad Bhagavatarka Maricha Muala, the sparkling rays of the Bhagavatam sun. Padma Purana, published with 55,000 verse Sanskrit text. And he did extensive research to compile a truly complete manuscript, a bona fide manuscript of the Padma Purana. Because many of the Puranas we don't have bona fide manuscripts of, and he actually did the research. Wow, 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 wow. Bhajan Rahasya, Secrets of Confidential Worship, and which I gave classes on this book. He corresponds each verse of the Shikshashtaka with different times of Lord Chaitanya's day and Krishna's day, and also with different stages of devotional service. You know, beginning with Ado Shradatata, Sadhu Sango, Bhajanal Kriya, etc., like that. It's an amazing book. I mean, I think I did it some December, like about 20 years ago. I did a whole seminar on that. It probably was recorded somewhere. Satkriya, Saradipika. These are the rituals for devotees, mainly for the household devotees, for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Prema Vivarta, crooked manifestations of ecstatic love. He published this as a translation of Jagadananda Pandit's book on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy. So Vivarta, means like illusion. So the illusion of prema. Wow. Swa Niyamad Dwa Dashakam, 12 verses of self-imposed vows, and that's the last literary work of Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur. And these discuss his renunciation, and it's the mood of prayers of Raghunath Das Goswami, what Raghunath Das Goswami also writes about the same thing. And just rejection of things unrelated to Sri Radhika, and to reject any devotee who doesn't accept Radharani. Phew! Firm determination, and that was his last work. Wow. Wow. Okay. Thank you for bringing this.
This is called Sharanagati and Gitavani.
Yeah, both. Yeah, I have that on my computer. Okay, all glories to Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivinode Thakur, Radhika Lokananda Ki Jai.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham
Kandar ako vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Asa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Dipan Dikayanti Jiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam
Wow. Oh my God. How could someone write so many literatures? It's superhuman. I mean, it's just like, wow. I mean, it's inconceivable. Okay. So please repeat. Om Gana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabadantika Vandeham Shigoro Shiyuta Parakamalam Shigurun Vaishnavamscha Shirupam Sagadajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parishana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Samin Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Dejatarane Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namane Shri Varshavanavi Devi Noyataiha Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayanhe Prabhave Namaha Madhurya Ujjvala Premadja Shirupanuga Bhaktita Shigora Kurana Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shrimurte Dinatarane Rupanuga Virudapa Siddhanta Dvantaharane Namo Gaudakishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murteye Vipralamba Rasambode Padambujaya Te Namaha Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchidananda Namane Gaudashakti Surupaya Rupanuga Vadayate Gora Avirbhava Bhumestvam Nirdeshta Sajana Priyaha Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vanchakalpa Turubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Panchatattva Atmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Dashe Namaha Hey Krishna Korana Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopikahanta Radhakanta Namostute Jayatam Sudata Pangor Vamamanda Matergate Matsarvashva Padamboja Radha Madanamohana Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpa Drumadaha Srimad Ratnagara Singhasanastau Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Deva Prastalevi Savyamana Smarami Sriman Rasa Rasarambi Vamshivata Tatastataha Karshan Venu Swanayara Govir Gopinatha Shri Estunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Prihe Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchidananda Namane Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Kesha Pushpanjali Kesha Pushpanjali Kesha Pushpanjali. Jai Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur ki jai. Stay stasis in the body, Charlie. Again. Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchidananda Namane Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Esha Pushpanjali Esha Pushpanjali Esha Pushpanjali. Bhaktivinode Thakur ki jai. Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Budale Srimad Bhaktivinode Swami. Stay says Vadevadi Vasesis Nivadi Paschatadaish Charlie. Right, once more. Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchidananda Namane Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Esha Pushpanjali Esha Pushpanjali Esha Pushpanjali. Jai Srila Bhaktivinode Thakur ki jai. Okay, Shikshashtaka.